Hey Penn Staters, I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and we are here in Auburn, Alabama for Vortor 2022. I'm joined by Kelly Lynch. She is the president of the Penn State Alumni Association. Kelly, how was the trip down and how's the trip been going so far?
Oh my gosh, this has been amazing. So I left Pittsburgh Friday morning at a 7 a.m. flight. Before the plane even left, we were yelling, we are chants on the flight. And quite frankly, ever since then, all I've been seeing is blue and white. When we were walking campus yesterday, there were a ton of Penn Staters. We yelled, "We are," to a group of Auburn people, and they yelled back, looked at us, went, "What?" We're like, "You'll learn, you'll learn." Then last night, we had a fabulous mixer out in, let me get this straight, Opelika. And we took over the whole restaurant. Our Rocket City chapter out of Huntington, Alabama did a fabulous job. And then afterwards, I think we took over downtown Auburn. In fact, there were some Auburn fans tweeting out, "What's happening? Where's all these Penn Staters coming from?" So now we have even more. This is, almost a half hour before the pep rally is supposed to start. We already have a huge crowd, so lots of energy.
Absolutely. Penn Staters travel for away games. We travel for bowl games. I think we're going to have a really visible presence in Jordan-Hare Stadium today. Talk about what it means to be able to gather with Penn Staters before a big game like this on the road.
Well, I think what was so interesting is I've met so many Penn Staters who live in the South, who are from Georgia, Alabama, from Florida, and they don't get this opportunity as much because we don't play down here. And so the energy they're bringing, the excitement to meet each other. We have people who have family coming from all over the country meeting here just for this game. And so I think that's the power of our network. It really is also a family. It's a family event amongst each other, but also within families. And it is, as you can see, I'm just so excited to be here. This is fabulous.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for all you do for the Penn State Alumni Association. At the Penn State Alumni Association, we are committed to connecting Penn Staters to what they love most about Penn State. And one of those things is certainly Penn State football. Thank you for all of your support. We are
Penn State.
Well, I'm all fired up after watching those videos. Welcome to Football Letter Live. Tonight, we welcome football letterman running back and the 2007 Alamo Bowl MVP, Rodney Kinlaw, alumni leader Jeff Sawatsky. He's the past president of our North Texas chapter. Rodney will talk about his time playing at Penn State and how he battled back from an early injury to have an outstanding career for the Nittany Lions. And Jeff's going to share what it was like to be at Auburn this past weekend with thousands of Penn State alumni and fans. Football Letter Live is supported, it's member supported, and we are so grateful to have your support. If you're a Penn Stater, you belong in the Alumni Association. And if you love Penn State, you're in the right place. This is Football Letter Live. Well, welcome into Football Letter Live. We have a lot to get to on the program. Jeff Sawatsky, the past president of our North Texas chapter, is here. Rodney Kinlaw is joining us, the 2007 Alamo Bowl MVP. I'm Paul Clifford, your host. I am glad to be here tonight after a huge win over the Auburn Tigers down in Auburn, Alabama. And I'm, as always, joined by my co-host, John Petishnock. John, how are you tonight?
Doing very well, Paul. I think I finally have come down from all the energy and excitement that we had over the weekend at Auburn. Our letterman guest tonight, Rodney Kinlaw, is in Atlanta, so we were in his area of the country over the weekend, but feeling very good. And also, I was thinking about before we came on air, just feeling very grateful. I feel like it's human nature to take certain things for granted, whether it's, you turn on the faucet and you expect water to come out, or, we're traveling across the country and it's like, well, yeah, sure, of course, we're going to have 2,000 people show up for our game day pep rally, and we're going to have people at the alumni mixer Friday night, and Jordan Hare Stadium is going to feel like Beaver Stadium. It's easy to take those things for granted when you're Penn State because that's what you expect. But I think what we experienced this past weekend was something that you can count on one hand the number of universities in the country who could pull off something like that.
Yeah, a wonderful trip down there, a huge victory for the program, a great environment, right? They talk about SEC football and how that environment's different, right? Not much different than Beaver Stadium, and yet fun to see that at some other places, and how they were able to pull off their orange out at least until the middle of the third quarter when their fans started to head back out to the tailgate lots. But yeah, it was just a wonderful look, a good program win that really sets us up for a lot of special things that we might have coming down the road. If you're tuning into Football Letter Live, welcome. We are glad to have you. Let us know who you are and where you're watching from. Go ahead and drop that comment. We'll get your name and picture up on the screen. I see Joe from Cunningham. I see Kevin Lashane from our Augusta chapter. Linda Rowan's watching from Levittown. Keith Maynor, Bonnie Blackman, Ed Weiland. Welcome to Football Letter Live. Well, John, we have two great guests tonight. Jeff's going to talk a little. We had the opportunity to meet Jeff when we went down to the Cotton Bowl just before the pandemic. Had a great trip down there. And then Rodney Kinlaw. I mean, one of the outstanding Penn State running backs in a history at a school that's had some wonderful running backs. We get to talk to each of them tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like Rodney is one of the better Penn State stories that maybe some fans don't know about. I feel like because, the way that he overcame such an early injury, really one of the more inspiring stories. I talked with him a little bit before the show started for fans who are following the current team. I see similarities between him and Devin Ford, where, they stayed committed to Penn State when it would have been easy to not do so. And so I think that there's that commitment level that when you have not just to the football program, but to the university. I know Rodney's fired up to be on the show. Wait till you see his backdrop. He is a Penn State guy through and through. And so, yeah, it's a lot of energy going through. And just one thing I'll mention real quick before we bring our guest on. I don't think this is a typical 3-0 start. I think sometimes teams will start 3-0 and you're still sort of thinking, well, we don't know what to expect from this team. You look at the first 3 games that this team has gone through, battle tested already, and we're still into September. And so certainly on the field going well, going to celebrate the 1982 national championship team this weekend. I know our friend Bobby White over at Beaver Stadium, he's fired up to get a lot of his teammates back in Happy Valley. And so certainly a good couple of days here in State College.
Bobby White, one of the very few football players in Penn State history to have 2 national championships, was obviously a redshirt freshman on that 82 team, and then a huge contributor to the 86 national championship. Let's give some shout outs here though. First, it's still looking back, right? Shout out to the Huntsville, Alabama, our Rocket City chapter, for all the great things that they did, pulling off that mixer where we did like a complete takeover of a bar/restaurant that was a good 10 miles outside of Auburn. And yet there were hundreds of Penn Staters that converged there. Shout out to the cheer and dance and the Nittany Lion, who were all there to make it such a special environment. But John, we're going to talk to one of our volunteers coming up here in a minute. Really, volunteers are the heart and soul of the Penn State Alumni Association.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about going on these trips, it's inspiring to see them travel. It's inspiring to hear about their Penn State stories when, it takes sacrifices to give back to Penn State, to give back to your community, to make these trips. And yet, I mean, it's such a good time when we're with our volunteers and all the work that they put into their local chapters, because look, we're fortunate, we're spoiled to live here in Pennsylvania, to live here in Happy Valley. And so if, once you graduate and Penn State alumni go all over the country and have an impact, they want to stay connected to the university. And our affiliate groups and our alumni chapters certainly do that around football, and they do that all year round. And so anytime we can get our alumni volunteers on this show, it's a big priority for us.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier about it not being a typical 3-0 start, right? And I would agree. There's been a little bit of something so far in this season in each of those games, right? It was a survive and advance scenario at Purdue, right? We had to score late in the game to bring home that victory. Road tested, battle tested early. Had a nice solid win. We come home and we blow out an Ohio team, which I don't think is very good, but you need a couple of those games on your schedule to get things finally tuned. And then a game with a lot of anticipation and expectations when we went down to Auburn. And what I love most about this team is that they have risen to every occasion, right? We didn't play down to Ohio, right? We took care of business in each of those scenarios, and came out with the result that we thought we would come out with. Right now, I don't think anyone was expecting a 29-point victory on the road against an SEC team, but we were certainly favored going in there, and we took care of our business. It's a sign of a team that is maturing, even though we're playing a lot of young players.
That was literally going to be my next point, and we did not rehearse this before the show. As well as they're playing, if you look at the players who are having such a high impact, I mean, as difficult as this is, just like take Nick Singleton out of the conversation just for a second. Katron Allen just for a second. Probably the best true freshman running back duo in the country. On the defensive side of the ball, you've got Kalen and Kobe King. You've got Zakee Wheatley, Chop Robinson, who, by the way, is only a sophomore. And the first 3 players I mentioned are all redshirt freshmen. And so for as much, the wins that this team has put together, like, yes, we have a 6-year senior quarterback, but these are wins that you would expect out of a team heavy, laden with kind of like 3rd and 4th year starters. And you've got guys who are playing major minutes who are just a year or 2 out of high school. And so, you talk about a youth movement maybe in the next year or 2, like that youth movement is happening now. And especially when you consider the environments that they're playing in, makes it even all the more impressive.
And while there is this great youth movement going on throughout the program, let's not underestimate the impact of that 6-year quarterback, or a 6-year whatever position he's playing now, safety, linebacker, that we have Jonathan Sutherland at, right? It's those guys who have brought a calming effect, right? Who are our younger players are looking to, right? And if we didn't have that senior leadership that we have right now, I think we'd be in a little bit of a different place, right? Phenomenal talent, right? But I think that balance that we've had so far, with the phenomenal youth explosion in the program, coupled with some great senior leadership, 6-year super double super senior experience. I think it's been a wonderful balance, at least early on here in the season.
Yeah, and by the way, like that balance is typically what you see from teams who win conference and national championships. They need the senior leadership and they also need an infusion of youth and talent. And it's the way that those two components are combined, I think, is what elevates the teams. And so, I'm not sure Mike Yursich is getting enough credit as he should. I mean, we're only 3 games in, but Manny Diaz, what he's been doing with that defense. And so I think, certainly James Franklin as the CEO of Penn State football, making sure people are in the right places and doing what they should. 3 games in, it's, I guess as a coach, you can always look for ways to improve, but it's hard to imagine a better 3-0 start if you wwere talking to Penn State fans back in August.
Yeah, look, you mentioned Mike Yursich. We're doing all the basic things on offense, right? Like, look, you look at some of those Nick Singleton runs, right? It's basic off tackle, right? There's nothing flashy going off there, but he hits the hole right faster than your average running back, and is able to break that. Look at there's no super scheme there, but then you have some creativity where Sean Clifford's catching a pass during the game as well, and so I love what I've seen out of the offense. We've seen a lot more blitzing out of our defense than I think we're accustomed to. And I think, I think Manny Diaz was smelling a little bit of blood in the water with their quarterback and the proclivity of that quarterback at Auburn to make some mistakes. I think that might have, motivated him to even blitz more.
Yeah, and just a huge shout out to Brennan Strange. Nick Singleton still had guys to beat, and the defenders had the angle, and Brennan Strange is just like pointing the way to the end zone. And CBS, they got a screenshot of that, but it was just such a... Like, these guys in the locker room, they know how good he is, and so it was an exciting weekend. A lot of to look back on and be happy about, and also we're gonna have a good show tonight with our guests.
Absolutely. Well, let's bring our first guest on to the program. Jeff Zawatsky is one of our alumni volunteers, former president of the Texas chapter. He's a 1997 graduate and a life member of the Alumni Association. He was at Auburn last weekend. At a lot of our alumni events. So, Jeff, welcome to Football Letter Live.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, let's get right into it. Big time win over the Tigers. We had some great alumni events leading up to the game. You were there. What was it like to be at Auburn with so many Penn Staters and feel that camaraderie?
It was fantastic, and it started in Atlanta when we landed on Thursday afternoon and continued just driving the highway to Auburn, seeing a lot of Pennsylvania plates and Penn State folks, and at dinner that night. And then it just kept getting bigger as the weekend went. Lunch on Friday, the whole restaurant was Penn State. And then we went to Opelika and had taken over that establishment. And then the tailgate, the Roar Tour was great to catch up with even more Penn Staters, and it just kind of built. And then when we got in the stadium, it was amazing to see how many white shirts and jerseys there were in Jordan hair. So we had a lot of fun with all the events that were planned.
Jeff, as Paul said in your intro, life member of the Alumni Association you are. What's the value for you in being a life member and being a part of the Alumni Association?
Part of it are these events, right? Getting to go and meet up with other alums. It's one of those things where you have an instant connection when you walk in, and just giving back, right? Penn State gave a lot to me with my education and helped me get to where I am, and so it was a no-brainer to become a life member. And the benefits are fantastic, whether it's the magazine or the football letter. But I think more so it's those in-person things that the Alumni Association can do, whether it's on campus when you go back or meeting up at some of these away establishments.
So, Jeff, first of all, shout out to Steve Swigert. Steve on the last program said, I want to party with Paul Clifford, and then made that happen by coming down to Auburn. We were able to meet in person. Good to meet Steve. But Jeff, you're the former president of the North Texas chapter. What inspires you to give back to Penn State at your local community, and maybe even touch on kind of our recent trip? I say recent, 2019 trip down to the Metroplex.
Yeah, I would say it's just something I learned from my parents, right? When we were kids, whether it was chaperoning a field trip or being a part of our sports parents organizations, it was always, if you're getting something out of an organization, you should give back to it, no matter what that is. And it started small. It was, hey, help set up chairs at a watch party, and then you build on that, and eventually you're helping out and run things. 2019 was great having Penn State here at the Cotton Bowl. The one bummer is I missed it. I was home with family in northeastern PA, but my team did great, helping put on a mixer on Friday night, just like we did in Opelika. And I think as John touched on it, I think it might have been Kelly in the video. Having Penn State here is not something we see every day. So when they do come, it's fantastic to see all of the support and all the alums.
Jeff, we have a lot of people tuning in who are part of chapters. That they volunteer, they give back. I think we also have Penn Staters who they want to get involved, but maybe they think maybe I don't have the time, or even if I can just go one time, they're not sure if they can have an impact. And certainly they can. If someone's on the fence, like, what's your advice for them about maybe what's the best way to start giving back in a way that works for them?
Yeah, it's have say hello, right? Find the chapter officers or board members at an event, right? And just go up and say hi. How can I help? It's not going to be like, hey, take over the chapter. It's going to be, hey, can you help us set up these tables? Or what are you interested in? That's one way I got really interested. I'm a big hockey fan, so I asked the president, hey, can I run an evening at the Dallas Stars? And that's one of the things I started getting involved in. And then you just build on it that way. But you're right. It's a volunteer position, and you give as much as you can. We have volunteers who can get to everything. And we have volunteers, they only do one or two specific things a year, but we count on them for that, and they do it really well. So even the little things are really important when you're trying to run a chapter. With watch parties, someone as simple as standing at the door and saying hello to everybody who comes in, welcome, is just a great way to get started.
Jeff, I want to give you a few minutes to brag a little bit about the work you're doing there in North Texas, right? If alumni are tuning in from Fort Worth to Dallas to Arlington, and they want to get involved with your chapter, what are some of the things that they can get involved with?
Yeah. So first thing, check us out on our website, psunorthtexas.com, or, our Facebook page. But we do a lot of different things. The big thing going on right now is high school recruiting fairs. It's too far for Penn State to send someone to every high school in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we have about 20 people who they go and represent the university. If you want to talk to kids, that's a great way to do it. It's only in the fall. We also, in January, we're going to do our big food bank volunteer day. We've got watch parties. We do networking events. We do sporting events. And we're always looking for new ideas from people. So, reach out to us on one of our social media channels. You can find all that info on our page, or come out to Chill Bar and Grill in Louisville this weekend for the game and say hi. I'll be there, and the rest of our team will be there, and we'd love to get you involved and make you feel welcome.
Now, Jeff, I seeing on social media or something that if you show up at a North Texas event, you may run into the Blue Band, or at least the alumni Blue Band, at one of your events?
We did have that a few years ago at our summer send-off. We had an alumni blue band that came out and played for the new students coming in, and our other students coming, who were returning. So yeah, that was a unique thing, and I think we still have a couple members in the area. I might have to resurrect that idea.
I love that.
That was, I think, was Craig Miklos, the former president. I thought that was something that happened a couple of years ago. Dick Bundy was the director of the band then. I mean, you talk about Penn State coming into your town, not something that happens all the time. Were you at that event where the Blue Band was there, and kind of like, what do you think that meant to the chapter to have that type of involvement with your chapter?
People enjoy it, right? Because you don't get to see the Blue Band come down here, and it's just another thing. Anything you can do to give people that connection back to the university is huge. You know, whether it's ordering creamery ice cream or grilled stickies we did at our holiday party one year as a party favor, that went over really well. But people just love that connection, and that's the great thing. If you're not sure if you should attend a chapter event, no matter where you're at, go, because it's not like walking into a normal networking event. You already have a connection with everybody in there, something you're going to have in common that you both went through at Penn State.
John, I'm glad you mentioned Craig Miklow's name, an iconic figure in the North Texas chapter. I could still hear his voice kind of ringing out as he screams, "We are."
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to drop. There's actually a story that we did on that event with the Blue Band, with the Alumni Blue Band coming down to North Texas chapter. Our superstar producer, Vince Longaro, will drop that in the chat so everyone can watch it. Jeff, we'll wrap up on a fun question. What are you predicting for Saturday against Central Michigan? What's going to happen? How will Penn State win and why?
So I think we're going to cover. I think we're going to get to see more of Drew Aller and Christian Veillere. Hopefully gets in there for a while. But I think it's going to be a chance to showcase even more of that young talent that Coach Franklin has been stockpiling the last year or so. And, you know, it's going to be a nice tune-up, get those folks experience as we head into Big Ten play.
Jeff, you get bonus points because you pronounced Christian Veillere's name correctly. Everybody's been saying Veilleux, like even James Franklin has been saying Veilleux. And at Media Day this year, Christian he said it's actually Veillere. So bonus points for you for getting that name right. And thanks for your time. We're happy to have you back anytime.
Yeah, thanks, folks. It was great being on.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, Jeff, take care. Thank you for all you do for Penn Staters down there in Texas.
So we'll transition. As much fun as last week was, the season goes on. We've got Central Michigan to look forward to. We've got our next guest. He knows what it's all about to be at Beaver Stadium. As Paul mentioned, the 2007 Alamo Bowl offensive MVP. Again, I think one of the better Penn State stories, one of the better inspiring Penn State stories that you'll come across. Battled back from an injury his freshman year to have really what was an outstanding career, especially his senior year. Finished with more than 1,600 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns in his career. And in that senior year that we mentioned in 2007, more than 1,300 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns. He's currently living in the Atlanta metropolitan area. He's a senior talent acquisitions consultant for Eden. Rodney Kinlaw, welcome to Football Letter Live. We are so happy that you're making time for us tonight. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good, Paul and John. Thanks for having me. How are y'all doing?
We're fantastic. We're riding high. We got Central Michigan coming in here. We're going to put a hurting on them, and then the season continues to roll on.
All right, so Rodney, we've talked with you a few times in the past for the Football Letter blog. We're going to throw those stories in the chat while we're talking. So let's start at the beginning for you. How did you become a Nittany Lion?
Great question, John. I became a Nittany Lion just from being when I was growing up. My uncle playing there, Courtney, watching him, LeVar, and just fell in love with Penn State and Joe at an early age, and this was determined to get there. So actually, Penn State was my first offer after my sophomore year. I went to camp there and ended up with the offer going into my junior year, so that felt pretty good. And after my junior year, I actually got another offer from Virginia Tech, so it came down to Virginia Tech and Penn State. It was two good choices to have between Beamer and Joe Pa. So at the end, Joe Pa won just with Penn State's education, just my family being familiar with the stadium and everything. So just being in love with the school, I just had to go there.
There are very few people in the history of our program where you can say one name and everyone knows who they are. LeVar, you dropped two of them, LeVar, Courtney. Talk about, so you're Courtney Brown's nephew. Talk about the influence that he had on you and your decision coming to Penn State.
I would say just growing up watching the games was a big influence. Courtney didn't really sway my decision anyway. He wanted me to go where I felt comfortable and wanted me to be the player I was going to be. So he didn't want me to just try to be like him or anything like that. So he was just him being a leader and being who he was inspired me to go to Penn State, and just how he was about his education, graduating high school with the 4.0 and things like that. Just really inspired me and it made me want to make sure I took care of my education first. And at the time, Penn State was top as far as athletes coming out. I think we were graduating with 94% percentage rate with the football team. So, and Joe was just really dedicated to making sure we had our education. So that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, that leads us kind of into the next question, Rodney. You talk about the education and how big of a part that is at Penn State. So much of being a student athlete at Penn State, being on the football team, goes beyond the field. What are a couple life lessons that you learned at Penn State that you find have stayed with you today and kind of guide you a little bit?
I would say just going through adversity with the ACL tear my freshman year, and just now just having faith, perseverance, and just learn to never give up. And you can go through situations where you just got to keep going forward. You can't give up. And even I think it was '03 and '04 when I first got to Penn State, we didn't have great seasons those first 2 years, but we just stuck with it. In '05, we ended up winning the Orange Bowl. So just persevere, getting through it, and just making sure you stick with it. So that it really sticks with me to the day. Just making sure I continue to do that.
So you had the opportunity to play for legendary coach Joe Paterno. Any favorite Coach Paterno story that you want to share with us? Most lettermen do an impersonation too, so not to put you on the spot there, Rodney, but there's a lot to live up to with the Coach Paterno story.
I would say the story that stands out to me most. I know, I think it was 2006. Joe actually, I want to say he tore his ACL in the Wisconsin game, and just remember after the game, we were thinking, "Wow, coach is going to be out from practice. We're not going to see him for a little while, and it's going to be different just not having Joe there." But the following week, Joe, it was a van pulling up in the Louisville Hall, and Joe was at practice, so he didn't miss a beat with that. So just just his dedication to the team, tremendous.
Rodney, we talk with lettermen who look back on certain games at Beaver Stadium or just the environment there. Looking back, what stands out to you the most about what it was like to play at Beaver Stadium in front of that many fans in that environment?
I would say it would have to be the whiteouts, just especially being there when it first started. I want to say it was the Purdue game, and even the game that stands out to me is the Ohio State game in 2005 when Tom was sacked, Troy Smith, and recovered the fumble. Just sealed the deal. Just being in the stadium with the whiteout, just all those fans, just seeing the sea of white is just amazing, and just something you can't compare to any other stadium.
So when you think back at your time at Penn State, and you think about all the games you played in, what was the best game you ever played in, or the game that kind of best embodied your time at Penn State?
I would have to say my final game, the Alamo Bowl against Texas A&M, just because of what I went through those years, just to lead up until that point, and just not really seeing a light at the end of the tunnel after tearing my ACL, and just sticking with it, and just that last game, just being in the zone and just feeling great, and just being happy, and just being able to accomplish that after waiting so long for my turn, and just being prepared for it and just taking advantage of it.
Kind of following up on that, Rodney, getting up to that point, coming back from the injury, playing alongside guys like Tony Hunt, battling for carries, battling for playing time, you persevered through a lot. Can you take us back? What was your mindset like during that time as a student athlete, overcoming all of that? And ultimately, what made you stay committed to Penn State?
It was tough at first, especially with tearing ACL, being a freshman, being from South Carolina, being so far away from home. Then just right after I tore my ACL, my grandma passed away, so it was really tough my first year. Thought about quitting a few times, but just I was glad to have teammates there to support me and just making sure that they encouraged me, and I didn't want to let them down. So just staying committed to Penn State was very important to me. I just loved the teammates that I had, and just from my parents and my grandma, just when you're committed to a team and you commit to something, just stick to it no matter what happens. You're going to go through ups and downs, and things may happen, but just sticking with it, because I could have left and transferred and got hurt again or be in the same situation. So I just felt as though at the time it was best for me to stay at Penn State and just stick through it and just make sure I got my education, because football wouldn't last forever, and I knew I would have something to fall back on, especially having a Penn State degree. So that meant a lot to me.
Football has changed over the years. You came in with Austin Scott, you came in with Tony Hunt. Someone gets an injury in a running back room filled with that kind of talent. Today, they're in the transfer portal, but you kept your commitment to Penn State. John, we heard Devin Ford talk a little bit about that. It almost seemed like Devin Ford's a little bit of a throwback player, talking about, you finish what you started. This week was the quote for him coming out of his press availability. But Rodney, I mean, was that your mindset was that you committed to Penn State, and so you're going to work through the injuries and finish what you started?
Yes, that's exactly what it was, especially just being in love with Penn State and wanting to go to Penn State just from being a kid. And like I said, following Courtney, I just couldn't imagine being at any other school at the time. And even during that time, when you left, unless you were a senior, you could go straight into playing, but you had to sit out a year and things like that. And just being at Penn State, it was worth staying there. And I just really enjoyed my time there and being with Joe and just learning from him. I couldn't compare it to anything else, so I couldn't imagine leaving.
Well, let's stay with that, Rodney, just for a second. When you look back at your time at Penn State as a student athlete beyond football, what are some of the memories that you have, just being on campus, making friends? What else beyond football made you think that, Penn State is the place for me?
Just the students, just when you go out, just how nice everyone was, the atmosphere, just the campus. It was just a great place to be. Like, State College is one of the best places to be in the world, especially on a Saturday. But just even just the classrooms, they're second to none. And even with Joe, making sure we went to class, make sure you had breakfast, and just everything was a great atmosphere being at the school and everything. And I haven't been back in a while, but seeing pictures and everything, it's really expanded. So I have to get back up there pretty soon.
Now, Rodney, after you left Penn State, you gave pro football a shot. You signed with the Jets, but as I look down your resume, you signed with some of the most unbelievable names in pro football: the Edmonton Eskimos, the Omaha Beef, the Mogen Lachenbach Mavericks
Yes.
in the German league. Those are unbelievable names of teams that you were associated with.
Yes, it was a good experience. I know Edmonton in Canada, that was a good experience. Actually, I signed with Omaha. They were a arena team. I never actually went. I signed, but didn't get a chance to go play. Backed out before that came to the point. I did go over to Germany and play the season there, and that was a great experience. Just being able to travel and just it was just me getting football out of my blood. So I think that was my final run for it. And after that, I think that was it. But it was a great experience going over there and just still being able to play a little bit.
You talk about getting football out of your blood. Talk a little bit about what you're involved off the field now. What are you up to nowadays, and how are you making an impact?
Just like John said earlier, I'm a senior talent acquisition consultant with Eden, a power management company, and also a husband and a father to a toddler, which is pretty much my second job. And I was also most recently the vice president of our alumni chapter here for membership. And just even I did a camp with Darryl Clark this summer and just getting back involved with football. I think I really want to start doing training running backs in the local area, probably starting this spring. So I think I really want to get involved in just helping them just be prepared for college and just after college, just finding other ways to give back.
Rodney, let's talk about your involvement with the local chapter. How did that happen, and what was fulfilling about that experience?
That happened. I met during COVID. I met Ian King. I believe Ian was on last week or 2 weeks ago. So I met Ian through LinkedIn, and we just started chatting. And he just asked if I was involved or anything, and I was like, no, but I would love to get involved. And I started going to meetings, and he did a few chats for like breakfast, like meetings. Since we weren't able to get together in person, I became very interested in it, and he asked me to join and be the chapter vice president, and I took that position. It was very exciting just being out there, going to the brass tap, being at watch parties, the games, helping out, being able to volunteer and give back, and just see the fans. So it was a great experience, and yeah, planning to get back out there. Just haven't had the time right now, so I will be out there again in the future though.
John, it's a lot of fun to hear former players like Rodney. We were down in Auburn, and Blair Thomas was at the tailgate talking about their transition from the time on the gridiron, right, to now being super fans. I mean, Blair Thomas, I don't know if you've ever seen him during a game, but he's among the craziest fans in Beaver Stadium. Rodney is talking about how he's transitioned from football player, right, to alumni volunteer, and now super fan. You can see him in his man room there, which is one of the all-time great backdrops, as you mentioned earlier in Football Letter Live history.
Yeah, and Rodney, you said something else that we wanted to follow up on. So you worked the youth camp with Darryl Clark, quarterback of the 2008 Big Ten championship team. How did the two of you stay connected after your playing days, and kind of what was it like to reunite with him on the field?
Me and Darren, we stayed connected once in a while over the years, and just recently this summer, we connected again. And he was telling me he was doing camps at Stone Mountain, and now I'm live pretty close to Stone Mountain, so he just asked if I wanted to come out, and told him I'll be out there, just getting out there and being with the kids, and just being with him, and just being able to give back. It was exciting, and just got my blood pumped again, just getting me more excited about football again. So, but it was a great experience, just being able to connect with him again and talk about the old times and the stories about Joe and the other teammates and the games and things like that. But it was a great experience just getting to connect with him again.
Earlier in the program, you mentioned being a member of that 2005 Orange Bowl team. You have been on teams that were started the season 3-0 with a lot of expectations. Right, I'm thinking back to that 2005 team. I think they ended up going 6-0 before the trip to Michigan. We're going to be, not wanting to wish the next two games away in the bye week. But in that same week 7, right, we are positioned to be 5-0 headed to Michigan. What advice would you give our current players, having been in that situation and having been on that path before?
I would say I would just think back to things that Joe would say. Every game 0-0, it's the score is 0, the record 0-0. You got to come out with the win. So after, you can celebrate your win, but Monday is on to the next game. You can't celebrate too much, and you don't want to get too high on yourself or too low on yourself. You want to kind of stay even kill. So you want to always be prepared and not look ahead, because things could happen. Like look at 2007 Appalachian State and Michigan, games like that. So you always want to be prepared for each opponent. You don't want to take them like.
All right, Rodney. So a couple weeks ago, we asked this question. It might become a standard question for Letterman here as we start to wrap up. Pretend I'm a 5-star high school recruit. I can go to any college in the country. Why should I go to Penn State? What's your pitch to me?
Uh, my pitch would be to get you in the Beaver Stadium. Once you visit the stadium or visit the campus, you're not going to leave. And just the academics, the alumni, we have one of the biggest alumni associations in the world, and just thinking more about than just football. Think about the opportunities you have after football, education, just the people you'll get to meet, the experiences you'll get to get. So just think about just not football, but the bigger picture.
All right, well, Rodney, we want to thank you for your time tonight. We were thrilled to have you on. We've talked with Rodney a couple times over the years for stories on the blog, have not had him on the show. We said that's got to change. Rodney Kinlaw, thank you so much for joining us, and please keep us updated on everything that you're doing. We wish you all the best in the future.
All right. Thanks, Paul and John. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Rodney.
Thanks, Rodney.
Take care.
Just an unbelievable story of perseverance through adversity, right? An ACL injury, and I was reading earlier about Rodney, the 11th player in Penn State football history to have 1,000-yard rushing season, which just seems a little mind-boggling, right? With the great talent that we've had at running back, that he was only the 11th.
Yeah, and they played a couple fewer games per season back then, and expansion hadn't taken place, and he had to. I mean, he wasn't a starter, I don't believe, until his senior year, and so you think about how many guys would stay in a program, not become a starter until their senior year, become a team leader, become a bowl game MVP, and really set the stage for that Big Ten championship team a couple of years later, and so. I think you get the sense from talking with Rodney, he has no regrets. The way that he handled himself at Penn State was, you kind of got the sense he was thinking about more than just the next year or two. He was thinking about, the next 40 years, and he wanted to know that he gave everything to Penn State, and he certainly did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, great show so far. It's going to get even better as we bring our producer, Vincent Longaro, into the program. Vincent, how are you tonight?
I'm great, Paul. Thanks for having me on again.
What's going on around campus with other Penn State sports?
Yeah, it's a successful start to the fall semester for a lot of other teams. In addition to football, field hockey, we got 2 big wins this past weekend, beating Michigan at Michigan, which is we always enjoy that, and then coming home and beating Cornell. So they're, I believe, number 7 in the country right now, and they're off to another great start. Women's volleyball also off to a great start, as we've mentioned before. They're unbeaten swept another 3-game homestand last weekend. This weekend, they start Big Ten play against Indiana and Michigan. So first, a couple more big tests for them as they continue rolling. Women's soccer, Paul, I don't know if you have a score update. I haven't been able to look at the score quite yet. I know they're playing Rutgers tonight at Jeffrey Field. We were up 1-0 earlier, but I haven't quite been able to see the score yet. If you're going to check that, and while he's checking that, women's hockey also starts their season tonight. They open up against Wisconsin. So yeah, hockey season starting already. It's hard to believe.
Absolutely. I am efforting to find us a score here. It is a matchup with Rutgers, as you mentioned. Rutgers, last year upset the apple cart, right? They were able to upset Penn State to be Big Ten champions for the first time in like 15 years. Thanks, Dad. Shout out to Joe Clifford. The Nittany Lions have a 2-0 lead. Allie Schlegel, a goal scorer early for the Nittany Lions.
We got to have your dad as like our correspondent on the scene for different sports at the end of the show. I'm sure you'd love that, Paul.
Let's not encourage that. Yeah, goals scored by the Nittany Lions, Allie Schlegel and Penelope Hawking, to have a 2-0 lead going into the 77th minute over at Jeffrey Field.
Yeah, as Bonnie, thanks for dropping that in there too, Bonnie, as well. I mentioned in the Roaring 20 in the football letter this past week, women's golf off to a great start as well. They won the Penn State Invitational a couple days ago as well. Again, so another team that's just, really competitive and succeeding on and off the field.
Absolutely. What can people expect if they go out to the blog? What would they read out there?
Yeah, so we'll have the game preview will drop tomorrow morning for Central Michigan, looking back at the 2005 game against Central Michigan, and also obviously looking ahead to this weekend's matchup. John has a great story about Anthony Poindexter on the blog. You can go check that out. I'll drop the link in the comment section as soon as I hop off the screen here. Another great story from John, and just the impact of Penn State and Penn State Letterman. He's not a Letterman, is he? He went to Virginia, but just making an impact and a great story about him and his son. So go check that out whenever you get a chance. I'm just so used to everyone on staff being a Letterman at this point. I feel like half the staff, Dan Connor, Terry Smith, just a lot of them. So, yeah.
You referenced the 2005 victory, a 40-3 victory for the Nittany Lions. It's a little eerie how it's lined up with the fourth week of the season in 2005. We played Central Michigan. We followed it up with Northwestern in the next game. And so I hope we're able to draw a lot of similarities to one of the all-time great teams in Penn State football history.
Yeah, absolutely. The one similarity I don't want is Michigan getting 2 seconds added back on the clock because the tonal also for the Michigan game I just saw today is going to be renamed after Lloyd Carr. So hopefully that's not a bad omen for us. And
hey, listen, you can't spell Lloyd without 2 L's. So,
that's right. That's right.
One of my all-time favorite jabs at Lloyd Carr in Michigan. And I'm not sure. I mean, Vincent, you were probably born for that game, but there was an interception on the late in the game there that was overturned, and I still to this day think it was an interception. So.
Yeah, I remember that game vividly. Unfortunately, it's one of the first Penn State games I remember. I was watching it, me and my dad with much of our family who were Michigan fans. And yeah, it wasn't a pleasant ending, but we got the last laugh as Big Ten champions that season. So I'll always remember that part instead.
Absolutely. Well, Vince, thanks for joining us on Football Letter, and thanks all for all that you continue to do behind the scenes to keep things running smoothly.
I thought I had set up like the next great segment where I said, or the next great segue where I said Rodney Kinlaw was someone who gave everything he had to Penn State. And I thought Paul was going to say, speaking of people who give everything they have to Penn State, let's bring on Vince Langaro, but that's okay. That's okay.
I get nervous in the transitions. I don't always pick up the cues, John. But we always find a creative way to bring Vincent on the show. And He adds a ton of value here, keeping us up to date on what's on the blog and what's going on around campus and other sports. Boy, women's hockey starting already. It's I said jokingly, but it's true. It's like an 8-month season for college hockey.
Yeah, and I saw they were downtown earlier today handing out team posters and getting fans to the arena, and so that was nice for them. Yeah, speaking of the blog, Anthony Poindexter, co-defensive coordinator, safeties coach, his son Anthony, or he goes by AJ. I noticed he was on the field against Ohio, and so I followed up with the team, and he's interning with the football team in the video department. He was a wrestler at George Mason, and an injury got in the way, and so he transferred to Penn State. Anthony talked about how he was so grateful to Coach Franklin to bringing him on the team. And so, you talk about a family atmosphere at Penn State. It's not just something that people say because it sounds good. And so, Anthony said he sees his son more often now than he did growing up just because he's at the office all the time and on the field. And so, if you missed that story last week, it's still posted to the blog. And game preview. And also, Mark Wogenrich, Penn State alumnus, writes for SI now. He has a really great story. Mike Zordich is actually on the coaching staff of Central Michigan, member of the 1982 national championship team. And so, I believe Michael was quoted as saying he thinks some friends had a hand in having the recognition game happen against Central Michigan this weekend, so he could come out of the visiting team's locker room and take a look at what's happening and be part of what's happening. So that's karma working for you.
Absolutely. John, hey, you did a great job last week with the Saturday email. We had some technical difficulties here on Football Letter Live, but the email was delivered on time and with great video content. We made lemonade out of lemons. And so kudos to you for continuing to deliver that value to Penn Staters who are now, I think, expecting it in their inbox on Saturday as part of their pregame rituals.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we brought into the fold during the pandemic, and we just felt like it was received so well. It was something that we enjoy doing here, internally. So that goes out every Saturday morning. We've got the preview and things that are on the blog, and really all the ways that you can get involved with the Alumni Association around the football experience. We're going to have the Roar Tour at Michigan, at Indiana, and at Rutgers for the remaining year. We'll have a bowl trip. Who knows? Maybe we'll end up going to Indianapolis in December. I probably shouldn't be saying that. But alumni chapters, and as Jeff and Rodney both said tonight, there are alumni chapters across the country that have watch parties. And so, if you can't get back to Beaver Stadium, if you can't get on the road, go to our website, alumni.psu.edu/groups. That's where you can connect with your alumni chapters. And that's what we try to bring you beyond what happens on the field, really the total game day experience with both on the road and at Beaver Stadium. And so hopefully people enjoy it. We know that they love the Blue Band. And so whether it's band, cheer, Nittany Lion, kind of the camaraderie that you see on the field afterward. Hopefully much more to come. It's nice not only when the team wins, but puts up 40 plus points and a lot of big plays. And that helps things a little bit.
Absolutely. Hey, John, I know Vince was showing a PowerPoint a little bit earlier that had what I think is going to introduce a huge controversy into the quarterback room with Chad Powers. Every year we have run-on tryouts for the football team. Chad Powers shows up out of nowhere. And Vince, I don't know if we have that picture there, but Chad Powers, number 200 in run-on tryouts, think fast, run fast. What do you think he might do to the quarterback room there, John?
I'll say this. I have heard more about Chad Powers in the last 2 or 3 days than I ever thought I would hear. And by the way, he was on Jimmy Fallon the other night. So if you think this is just something that's cool for Penn State and nobody else is paying attention, this has actually gotten quite a lot of national play. And so, but you know what? I think, look, Sean Clifford's the quarterback, Drew Aller, Christian Veilleux. I feel like, I don't know if Penn State fans can take another quarterback in the quarterback room capable of starting. I remember when Trace McSorley, people were like, Trace McSorley would throw an incomplete pass and people would say, we want Sean Clifford. Sean Clifford has done everything you can ask of.
Right.
And so, but hey, Chad Powers, we'll have to get Vince out to practice, get a scouting report. Maybe we can pull some strings, have Chad Powers on the show. All they can do is say no. So
I guess technically he's a football letterman now, right?
Yeah.
Anthony Poindexter isn't, but Chad Powers is now. So
that's the angle that we take with him. And we say, hey, look, we are the premier organization that highlights Letterman. You are a Letterman. You got to make your appearance on Football Letter Live. We'll see what we can do this season for our alumni.
For people who may not be in on the joke, Chad Powers, there's some great video out there. Go ahead and Google search him. Eli Manning actually showed up at walk-on, which what we call here at Penn State run-on tryouts, and put on a show. He was mic'd up. He had a lot of fantastic one-liners, and so check out Eli Manning's tryout to be a Penn State football player. I see on next week's show, Letterman cornerback Jordan Smith is going to join us, another Penn State football player who was also involved with our one of our affiliate groups as a volunteer. And we need to save a lot of time for Spider Caldwell and the stories. We should maybe have thought ahead a little bit and just do a Spider Caldwell show, just him by himself.
Yeah, we'll have a very, very, very brief look back on Central Michigan, very brief look ahead to Northwestern. But yeah, I mean, look, that's a power duo. You've got Jordan Smith, who was on the Big Ten championship team in 2016, was on the Rose Bowl team. We saw him in Washington, D.C. last year. Thrilled to have him on. And yeah, you talk about like just saying one names, LeVar, Courtney, you just say Spider, and Penn Staters know what you're talking about. And so certainly next week, have a lot of fun. Maybe we'll go more than 60 minutes. That's okay. I have a feeling nobody's going to say, boy, Spider's just telling too many stories. Like we're just going to we'll turn off our mics and cameras and Spider can he's got the floor for as long as he wants it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe we can get Kirk Deal. Like maybe you and I can take the night off and get Kirk Deal interviewing Spider Caldwell and we'll sit back and watch.
What happened? Like, is it spontaneous combustion with the universe if those two guys are in the same room again telling stories? I feel like who knows what would happen. But yeah,
we'll have to Google parallel world theory.
Yeah, but alumni can look forward to that. And but and Spider leads the stadium tour during We Are Weekend. And so, we had alumni groups there this summer, and Spider's very gracious to make time, and he's the right guy for that position to talk about what's going on. And he's got the best stories, the best trivia answer. Levi Brown, I think it's like size, I don't know, 18, 22, the largest shoe that he has at Penn State. And so a lot of good things coming from Spider Caldwell next week. Just a couple of reminders as we wrap up the show. You can visit us on Twitter at psufootballletter.com. Now I'm doing Paul's part, and I probably shouldn't be doing that. The blog at thefootballletter.com. Welcome Paul Clifford back onto the program. Paul, how are you doing tonight?
You wrap us up here. Like when I start clicking around and log myself out, I lose the right to close the show. So finish strong.
Just finishing thoughts. I just would like to reinforce what I said at the beginning. It's, we guard against taking things for granted. We appreciate our Letterman guest, our volunteer guest, our volunteer network. Appreciate the audience tuning in. It's been a wonderful start to the season, both on the field and with the show. Appreciate Vince and everyone here at the Alumni Association who helps make this happen. And so look forward to a great game on Saturday. You'll get the Football Letter game day email Saturday morning. You'll get the post-game email on Monday with, I call him Ace Photographer, Steve Manuel. I'm just going to start calling him Ace. Steve Manuel will have a full-size photo gallery. Vince Lungara will have the Roaring 20, and that will come your way. And it's only September. It's going to be a lot more good things coming your way this season with Penn State football, with the Alumni Association, with the Football Letter. And so until then, we are
Penn State. Think fast, run fast.